Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Rugby NorCal podcast featuring the Rugby Development Summit. We are doing an initiative right now to introduce our Rugby Development Summit coaches and presenters to our Rugby NorCal community. And today I'm meeting with the Fords coach at St. Mary's College of California, a second-time guest on the Rugby NorCal podcast, Andrew Cook. Andrew, how you doing today?
Great, Nate. Thanks for having me back. Excited to be at the front end of another season at St. Mary's and I guess rugby throughout California. So exciting time here and excited for the Development Summit.
Yeah, man. September time, school gets back in session, right? People start kind of getting that rugby feeling again. The butterflies start coming a little bit. And, it's definitely like here, right? So we're getting that rugby feeling. I know St. Mary's has started this year already and had a great day in Boston the other week. And we're looking forward to, obviously a great off season where a lot of work needs to be done, a lot of organization and a lot of learning, hopefully at the Rugby Development Summit as well. And so we're certainly glad that you're on board and, we're excited for the sessions that you're going to be having at the RDS.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I'm excited to get to be a part of it. I haven't been able to attend. We were out of town last year when
Mhm.
we hosted it, but I have a number of buddies of mine who are also coaches that went and took just so much away from all the different coaches that were there. Probably captured maybe 10, 15% of everything,
Yeah.
but it made them much better coaches. And so now to get to be on the other side of it and um, specifically get to talk about the lineout, which is something I'm super passionate about. Um, and get to share whatever I can with all the coaches in attendance. I'm excited and honored to get to be a part of it.
Awesome. Yeah, and we're certainly excited to have you. Just so for everyone out there that doesn't know Andrew Cook, just a little bit about your coaching background and maybe even your rugby background too. Obviously, started playing rugby in high school at Lama, went to St. Mary's, 3-year captain, right? And then after your trip at St. Mary's, took a little bit of time off, but then now we're going on year 10 of coaching at St. Mary's, right? Being the Fords coach. You've had a ton of different Eagles, MLR guys coming through that you've helped, get to that level. Just being able to have an American coach there that's been a part of a winning program that has produced MLR, Eagles, professional players is something that I think is new and beneficial to our RDS this year. You look back at your 10 years, right, coaching at St. Mary's. When you first got in, what was your expectation, and how has that expectation, I guess, changed over the last decade?
Yeah. Um, when I first got in, it was honestly, I had decided I had played enough men's club, right? Did a couple years
Uh,
playing for O Club, and um, for me, it wasn't clicking anymore, right? I just didn't feel the love of playing like I used to. So um, one knew I wanted to still be involved in rugby, just not at what level. Went out and did a season. My last year playing at O Club, I was also coaching a JV team at the Oaks.
hmm
Um, and that was enough to kind of tell me, hey, I think coaching is something I do want to be involved in. I don't know that this is the level I want to coach, partially just because of the language I like to use. And I didn't want to do that to a bunch of JV age kids.
Understandable.
Um,
We appreciate that.
yeah. um, but then reaching out to Tim and Johnny and just said, hey, I just want to help. I don't know how much time I can commit realistically. I was still newer to the workforce at the time and kind of just still feeling it out. And if this is something I could really do. Um, and so for the first year or two, it was on a much more limited basis. And then eventually it got to the point where it was decided, hey, we kind of want you to run the line out on your own. Let's see how you do. And getting that level of ownership there was like, I mean, at the time I was panicked, like I
Sure.
first time actually being fully responsible for a big core aspect of our game. Definitely a little nerve wracking,
Mhm.
but it was also something that really kind of lit the fire in me. Doing this not as much, obviously it's recreationally, but approaching it like I would if I was playing, right? So a lot of studying that had to go into it, learning, reaching out to other coaches, reaching out to players that are in different environments, and just gathering as much information as I could. And honestly, for me, just doing a ton of learning, right? And I had only really played at St. Mary's and Olympic Club, so my scope of what I was kind of able to see was still pretty limited.
Mm-hmm.
And that's that kind of started with the line out. And since then, I've had this hunger to learn constantly. And so, I probably have ticked off a couple people because I track them down and pester them until they tell me yes or no. If we can just hop on a Zoom call, and I'll talk to any rugby coach about anything, right? If it's lineouts or scrums or attack or defense or breakdown. And I just found kind of from that turning point of taking over the lineout, that really showed me, hey, this is something I do want to take a bit more seriously than just showing up once or twice a week.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, now I'm here 10 years later, running the forwards, doing a lot of the work in the attack. And, there's really three full-time coaches at St. Mary's between me, Tim, and Mark Bass. And so we have to share a lot of responsibility, right? I'm
Mm-hmm.
definitely a forwards coach first, but I love coaching every aspect of the game. Only thing I don't really talk about is kicking because I don't really know how to add much value there.
Well, as a former hooker, there's not too many times where you're going to need to kick. Maybe if you're up by a ton and you
No,
want to have some fun, but I think Tim would have had something to say about that post game if we ever tried to do that. But
yes,
I do really love to hear that your coaching responsibilities and intention really started out with that set piece and with the line out. I think that's really interesting, especially looking at a coach that had such a phenomenal playing experience and playing history at St. Mary's. You being able to, I mean, you're a Gales, an inner Gales legend, I would really say, right? You're one of those kind of guys for sure. And so having you come in, be intentional about the line out, and then over the last decade, obviously have an incredible amount of success from a coaching standpoint, I think really goes to show that you're going to be able to add a lot of value here at the RDS and really, help people in the game understand, hey, what does a club like St. Mary's do in the set piece and in the line out, and what kind of takeaways could you take, or could a coach take, just even if we're going down from your JV high school guys or your middle school guys all the way up to the adult kind of coaches that are going to be there. So that's just a great thing to, I think, know as we lead into the RDS on October 10th to the 12th. I'd love to talk a little bit, especially as we see the Eagles game last week, and you've had a plethora of MLR guys and professional guys come through, and not to just feature those guys, you've had incredible forward packs over the last decade. The St. Mary's does consistently, right? And usually it's with guys that are not like the biggest dudes or the strongest guys. Guys like Hunter Shalansif really stick out to me. 5'9", but he was an All-American, right? And so I don't want to discount those kind of players that obviously don't have the size, but we have produced a significant amount of professional and MLR players. And so you look at guys like
hmm
Peyton Talea Lalio, you look at Vili Hilu, both of those guys playing for the Eagles right now, Dino Waldron from back in the day as well. What really sticks out about those kind of forwards, I would say, and what sticks out about those kind of guys that makes them, just like different within the game, right?
yeah, really, really great question. I think, I think I look at those guys you named, even Hunter, right? Who, yeah, didn't make the Eagles, but had a stellar 5-year career at St. Mary's and was drafted into the MLR. Didn't end up working out the way he was hoping, but still a really impressive player. And I think the thing that kind of the through line through all those players is their love of being coached,
Hmm.
right? And it can be, I don't want it to sound like a cop out, right, or a cheesy answer, but I mean, there was this hunger for them to always be I want to get better, and I know that's going to come through coaching, right? And not just that's part of it, right? Then they have to take that coaching on board and actually go apply it. But I mean, all those guys you mentioned were just incredibly hungry athletes, all very bright as well, right? That's a big part of it is the IQ. As I saw them from, I didn't see Veely as a freshman, but take a guy like Peyton, freshman through his 5th year, like the IQ around the game grew massively. And his willingness to dedicate so much time to perfecting his craft and then, making it to the MLR, that hasn't stopped, right? I still stay in touch with most of these guys, even when I'm not coaching them, and seeing his growth continue shows me that all that stuff I talked about hasn't changed, right? He still is hungry for coaching. He's still always trying to get, even if it's just that one little percent better at every scrum session or whatever it is. He hasn't lost that. They all haven't lost that. That's why they've gotten to where they are, right? And so I think for me, that's kind of what if you had to point to one thing they all have in common, it would be that just insatiable hunger for improvement every single time we're together at St. Mary's. And then when they go on to their next thing, whether it's MLR or a career or whatever it is, like I don't think they lose that. And that's why they're going to be standouts, whether it's in an MLR team or the Eagles or in a professional career elsewhere in an office.
Interesting. Yeah, and that's just great insight. And it's like, how can we? I mean, those are the players that, as a coach, those are the players that you obviously you really gravitate and love because they have a eagerness to want to intake and try and perform, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
it's like, and when you have players like that, at least certainly in my experience, it's like you really want to make sure that you're delivering the coaching in a way that's concise, understandable, simple enough to where they can get it and then they can do it. And I remember the last time we were talking on our podcast after we won or after St. Mary's won the national championship a couple years ago, you talked about always asking players, how can you deliver the information better? How does like what kind of language am I using? And really self-reflecting on that. Have you, in your time in coaching the set piece, I mean, maybe even scrums or lineouts, when you're trying to talk to
Mm-hmm.
those players or any player, do you have any sort of like generic thought process on how you're delivering that type of coaching or how you're delivering those things? I'd love to know if you had any specific thoughts around that.
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. And it's like it's perfect timing because coming off of last year, obviously not um yeah, exciting to get to a semifinal, but not excited with the result of the season. Um and so ton of reflection this summer and talking with Tim and players that we knew were coming back and even going so far as to reach out to right in Boston, just had the chance to hang out with our old captain Kaipono Kayoshi for the whole
Mm-hmm.
weekend,
Mm.
right? And
Yeah.
so being able to reach out to that network and say like, okay, where can I refine things here? And I think it hasn't happened just this summer. I've been working on it, you know, through all 10 years. But when I was a new coach, I thought, hey, the way to prove to the players that I know what I'm talking about is to just be able to deliver all this information about everything all the time. Right. The problem with that is, as we both know, players are only going to retain so much.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm saying all this stuff all the time. I don't really know what they're going to walk away from this meeting with, right? What part of what I said did they walk away from? And so what I've found good success in so far, and something I'm doubling down on super hard this year is, guys, let's pick 3 key points, right? And these are going to kind of be our core tendencies through the year when it comes to set piece.
Through the
So
year. Through the year.
through the year, right?
Interesting. Okay.
Really, really basic things that we can all fall back on. So like let's just take scrums for example, right? Key tendency would be north and south. What I mean by that is if I had a camera behind us, right, I would want to see every single spine going north and south, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because that means all our power is going in the same direction. Right. I don't want a tight head facing this way because then his spine's not going north-south, which means the power's not going where we want it to go. All right. Another one, it's just, it's nothing, it's not my personal thing. This is worldwide, but would be 12-1. And that has to just do with the angles of everyone's thighs before we set and then when we set.
Hmm.
Right. So before set, I want everyone at 12 o'clock, like the face of a clock, we should be here. And then when we set, I want everyone's thighs to be at 1 o'clock. So that's just like two key things. And what's nice is it makes it really easy for players to take ownership in a game or in a training or reviewing film. All right. And so already this year, even though we're just at the very beginning, we've talked about scrums, we've done some scrum practice, obviously, because we had to go play Boston. But it's really nice now. I can say, okay, Nate, let's review this scrum clip together. Right. What are our core tendencies or that we have to have, right? Kind of our non-negotiables. Oh, well, we got to be north and south and we want to go 12-1. All right, play the clip. What do you think? And so it gives the players a lot of power to be able to do self-assessment, right? And kind of fix things on the fly. Like, hey, that one didn't feel right. Yeah, I was watching you at halftime and you were not at 12, you're at 11. Or hey, you're taking an angle on bind. You got to go north and south. And so while still being able to deliver all the super intricate techniques and we still get into that. I don't want to say that we don't talk about it, but all of that is always serving one of these greater core principles we have.
Mm-hmm.
Right. If I'm telling you have to do this, it's because this is going to make you go north and south.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm telling you have to do this, that's because it's going to get your setup to be at 12 o'clock where we need you.
Yeah.
Right. And so nothing groundbreaking, but I have learned that the simpler the things that I need them to take away from training, the better.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And if I know they're only going to remember two things, all right, well, these two things I have to have you walk away from this training knowing north and south and 12-1. And if there's a couple other things we can get to, great, but you have to walk away with those.
Yep. Yep.
And for me, it's worked well. And I think the biggest reason why I touched on it is just the ability to give that ownership over to the guys who are actually doing this on Saturday, not me. Right. And I don't ever want them feeling like, well, Andrew's the only one who's going to know the answer. Right. So we have to wait till we can get coached in the middle of a game. Like, I want to make sure they feel like we have the tools to problem solve anything that we see come Saturday.
Yeah, and it's
And
like we always say, it's a problem-solving game, right? And so
Mhm.
if you're giving, I just love hearing this because I could just see as a player if you have these core tendencies or these core principles that are really simple, not only can you self-govern, but then as a player, as an individual, but then as a teammate, you can also too like, hey, this is what I think happened here, right? Like, or hey, this,
Yep.
hey, that, and then that allows a player and a team to problem solve on the field, and with that comes more success, right? As the answers to your issues are self-governed, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think I mean, it seems like that's something that any coach could take away at any level. Hey, what are one or two or three things that you want to, that you want your set piece to be this year, right? And then off of that, you can get into the intricacies with individual players, right? Or individual things that you see, right?
Exactly. Yep.
And yeah, fascinating, really great. And so, like with that, I talk a little bit like technical, right? Like
Mhm.
obviously, the playing days were a while ago, and you've been coaching for a decade now. Has the lineout changed much from when you were playing at St. Mary's to how you're coaching today? Has it evolved significantly, or is it still, from a technical standpoint, pretty much the same? Talk to me about that.
So there's definitely been some there's definitely been some changes. And I think one of the biggest ones has just been the mall
Hmm.
and how it's refereed. And if you have a good mall, it is really, really tough to defend or stop legally, right?
Hmm.
And you go back, I don't have it in front of me. I'm sorry, but one of my slides that I present every time we're talking about our line out at the beginning of the year I think it was the 20, I think it might have been the 2019 World Cup. Um, but I think it was 78% of tries came from lineout, right?
Wow.
That was the source of the scoring. I might be off on the statistic, but I know it was a large majority of tries came from lineout possession. And so for me, that just means okay, we have to be so good here, right? Especially a team like St. Mary's, we love to attack, right? And it's our job to set up our backs with just primo ball whenever we can, whether it's from a drive or just off the top, however we get there. As far as like lifting, right, and jumping, I wouldn't say there's been a ton of changes in the technique there. Um, I think my biggest emphasis has always been and will continue to be is just, is there a way for us to be more efficient within that framework of movement,
Hmm.
right? Take a new lock, for example, right, who's never jumped before. Okay, everyone's jumped, right? We've all jumped, whether it was playing basketball or jumping rope, whatever it is. You've jumped your whole life. Okay, so that's all I'm asking you to do. But some guys have tendencies to think they got to launch themselves off the ground, so they squat really low to jump. And so it's just looking at little things like that. Like, okay, you don't need to dip that low. I just need you to get the first 3 or 4 inches off the ground, and the lifters will finish the rest. Um, and so for me, it's not necessarily, or I'm not aware of any brand new lifting techniques or anything like that. It's more about, all right, I know I'm going to go from here to here, and then I'm going to jump. I just need that bit of movement to be as efficient as possible because we're never going to be the tallest team in college rugby. And so we really have to lean into the ability to identify the space we want to attack. And then is there something we need to do to preserve that space? Excuse me. Or if the space isn't there, what can we do to open that space? And then how quickly can I get into that space?
Hmm. Hmm.
And so I do a lot with IQ with kind of our line out captains on just like, here's pictures you're going to see. And let's talk through, like, from my standpoint, here are the opportunities I see in this defensive picture. And here's the calls that could get us there. Do you agree? Do you see things differently? It hasn't, for me, been a lot, there hasn't been a ton of like technique in the lift and jump that's changed
Hmm.
um, since I was playing, at least.
Hmm.
But it's just always this, you know, quest for can we be that half second quicker? Can we change things up a little bit to give other defenses a different picture, whether it's every year or week to week or game to game if twice.
Hmm. So you're talking about the efficiency and the overall mindset on how a single line out needs to be approached because there's so many different ways. I mean, not even just talking
Yeah.
about full or five man or whatever you want to do, right?
Yep.
But really, obviously there's the technical part of hey, we got to get someone up and we got to get the ball, right? How do you go
Yep.
about doing that? And then it's and then there's the gamesmanship part about it, which is, okay, here's what they're showing us, and then here's how we need to do things. And, oh, they've got, the defense they're huge, right? So how do we exploit and how do we make sure that we can get what we need done, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Well, I'm certainly juiced about the session. That's for sure. I know you're gonna be talking to a ton of different coaches that day. And, maybe just to as we wrap this, maybe just to kind of some pre thoughts on your sessions. Do you have any thoughts on maybe a takeaway or something that some way that you're approaching these specific sessions? Obviously we've got a wide breadth of coaches that are going to be there. Some that have been around a long time, some that have been brand new. So everyone's going to take some different things as
Hmm.
as we go through the entire RDS. Um, but any like certain takeaways that you'd want to maybe express or thoughts that you may initially have?
Yeah. I think sort of touched on it, but I would love for every coach to walk away with at least thinking about, hey, when I'm thinking about my next year, right? You might have some returners, you might have some new players coming in, but like, what do you want your non-negotiables to be at the line out, right? And like kind of what are your core beliefs around the line out, right? And okay, now you start to nail those down. And then, okay, here's the tools I have to get that vision executed. Um, so, like I mentioned there, I'm not going to show you a new lifting technique, right? It's all going to be the same. So it's more about, all right, what kind of line out do you want to have? And here's what I do, right? I'm going to be a completely open book, right? That's one of the things I love about rugby. There's not a ton of secrets,
Yeah.
and most coaches are very open to sharing whatever intellectual property they have. Um, and so, I think a big thing for me is just going to be talking about kind of what you want your lineout to look like. And okay, you want it to be, if you're like St. Mary's, you're short, so you're going to lean heavily into speed, efficiency, and being smart. Okay, cool. Here's some tools to help you be quick, be smart, and be super efficient in all your movements. Um, and so I hope, really, I just want people to walk away thinking, wow, there's a couple things I just haven't even thought about before when it comes to the line out, right? It's just kind of like splitting the backs and forwards, and we go over there and throw the ball at each other.
Yeah.
Um, if they could come away with just, hey, this is what I want as a coach out of my line out, and then that's your starting point, and then you get into the skills and techniques and mindset and all that. I think that would be a huge win because that has helped me a ton as a coach, and would love to kind of be that spark for another coach in the room.
Well, I think when it comes down to it, it's understanding and having more of an intention about this particular part of the set piece, and I think that's a phenomenal takeaway. And I think just being able to listen to somebody who is trying to implement these kind of strategies at the highest of collegiate levels across the country is going to be super valuable for all of our coaches in Rugby NorCal and NCRFU as well, and anyone else who comes from around the world. We had some international travelers come last year as well, and so I just appreciate you taking the time and giving the coaches that are in attendance a view of what it's like to be an American coach and coaching at an American school. I think that's super valuable. And a different outlook to what is usually out there at rugby development summits across the country. And so
Mm-hmm.
just appreciate you definitely taking the time. And I can't wait for October 10th to the 12th to be here so that we can, do a ton of learning and
Yeah.
get together. And I'm so glad that you also said that, the relationships that you build at these, being able to talk to other coaches, being able to talk to Andrew Cook at St. Mary's or Leslie McKenzie, the Japan women's coach, or Daryl Suasu or Nick Lay or Adrian Ferris, right? Being able to just start those relationships. I think when it comes down to it, that's where you learn the most is by not only just coming to these events, but then continuing with the talking and relationships that you build at it to help you get better consistently, right?
Yeah.
So just a
Yeah,
great
that's
opportunity to do that.
a great way to say that because that's honestly, there's so much value in that. And like I said, I'll be an open book, happy to share whatever anybody wants to hear. And um, it's this weekend is like a crash course in growth, but what you do after that and how you stay in touch and keep your coaching journey growing, that's almost more important, right? This is just the start of that. And so again, thank you for thinking of me and letting me be a part of it. I'm really, really excited to get to do something like this. Um, Hopefully it's coming through the way I talk about how passionate I am about this sport, and specifically the line out is kind of my baby at
Mhm.
St. Mary's. I love it, and so to get to share that with other coaches who are like-minded is like it's really exciting to see where this can all go, and keep growing the sport in this country.
Beautiful. Well, Andrew, we're juiced that you're going to be a part of it. We can't wait to see everyone there. If you're interested in going to the Rugby Development Summit, head on over to rugbysummit.com. Get your tickets today. We've got early bird tickets going until October 1st. So make sure you get the best deal by getting in there now and getting your tickets and being there at the Rugby Development Summit at St. Mary's, October 10th to the 12th. If you have any questions, always feel free to reach out to us. Andrew, thanks again, man. We'll see you.
Thanks, Nate. Always a pleasure.